And turn and face. And maybe we can see what we're working on right here. Something like that. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. I will be listening to The Nature of Prey by Space Paladin 15 on YouTube. And I will be working on some other little knicky-knackies I have floating around here to get them done. And yes, if you want to say hi in the chat, great. If not, your silence is always appreciated as well. I hope you have a good evening. Get those dishes done before bed. Maybe do a little quick vacuum. Fold up the rest of the laundry that's been sitting at on the end of the couch for like 3 days now. I know we don't talk about it, but it's there. We don't have to pretend. Yes. So anyway, welcome to the live stream. It will be the boring one, and I hope you have a good night. No, I didn't want to watch me. Oh, how do I watch? No. Back. There we go. No, back! Damn the buttons. Let's see now. Library. History. I know I listened to it already, but I'm listening to it again.
Whether you're breaking a sweat.
And always, if you feel the need to hit me with a thumbs up, always appreciate it. Oh, it's so bright and colorful right here. But I don't have any matching eyes besides like these two guys.
The first time they were at Shua Rizal. I trust in the judgment of several hundred species, as should you. Marcel groaned. I never told you. The captain's paw twitched around his gun.
Never mind, I don't have backs.
Later, and my fur stood on end. Blood spurted through a wound in Sovlin's thigh, and the crippled leg buckled beneath him. It wasn't the Gojira off the first shot, to my exuberant relief. Rizal tackled the spiky male away from the human. The first officer disarmed his superior and cast a blank stare at the prisoner. The proximity to Marcel seemed to bother him, though he tried to keep his wits. I was amazed that the Kolshian veteran had intervened. The talk of human neural activity must have instilled some qualms in his mind.
Apparently that's all I'm doing tonight because I forgot I got cards, but no earring backs.
Sovlin was restrained and Marcel was incapable of lunging at him. I yelped as I felt a sudden tug around my waist. Zahn was propping me up as a shield and trying to load a syringe. Let the Van Lil go, Zahn, Rizal spat. You don't want to hurt him.
I don't want to hurt Slenik, but I need to fix him. He's ill.
Release him. Now. The doctor pressed the needle to my throat, ignoring my whimper.
Oh, what?
Or I remove the human's collar, and we find out. The predator was in no condition to move. It was obvious to me that he was on the brink of losing consciousness. I think Rizal knew the throat was empty, but he worked like a charm on the doctor. Zahn's grip slackened, and I slithered out of his arms in a flash. My sprint to Marcel's side was a blur of elated bliss. The human yelped as I dove atop his chest, forgetting about the inflamed bruises. He pushed me off him, with care not to hurt me. Gritting his teeth, he tried to sit up, but didn't get farther than raising his head.
God damn it.
My stomach flipped at the sight of his nose, twisted to the side, with the skin turning a deep purple already.
Did you tell them?
Marcel croaked. I tilted my head. Tell them what?
About Earth. They're going to...
No, it's a long story, but we've got to warn your people. While my eyes were averted, Rizal placed a makeshift gag around Sovlin's mouth. The captain was squirming, his voice muffled to grunts. The first officer had resorted to...
That's disappointing.
Howling his frustration. I assumed he was at a loss for what to do with Marcel.
Damn it. This is my plan gone just like that. I'll staple up a couple of these bastards.
Was a frightened Kolshian with a gun. It was the primary obstacle in our path to getting Marcel home. I contemplated an act of persuasion, since my odds of fighting him unarmed seemed paltry. If the human dies, why did he shoot his own captain? I thought. Surely he realizes he's too far in to back out now. He wouldn't want his treason to be for naught. Rizal, you've got to get Marcel out of here. He needs a doctor, I pleaded. I know. And Zahn would poison the thing as soon as treated, Rizal sighed. If there's billions of these predators out there, I suppose letting this one go isn't going to make a difference. Even if... Never mind. I'd better not give him time to change his mind. He really sounds like he's having second thoughts. I flicked my ears toward Marcel. How are we going to move him?
Well, thank you for the thumbs
The first
up.
officer surveyed the vicinity. His eyes landed on the wheelchair Zahn used for me yesterday. I sensed his hesitancy to retrieve it from the observation room with Sovlin still grumbling curses and Marcel trying to sit up. The Kolshian tapped me on the shoulder and pressed the gun into my paws. If Sovlin or the Predator try anything, shoot them, Rissel growled. I'll be gone a few seconds. The officer sprinted over to the wheelchair's resting spot like a predator was chasing him, which I guess he felt like it was. He rode it back to our location and almost fell over when Marcel glanced at him. I considered pointing the gun at Rissel, since I didn't trust him to treat the human like a person. The Kolshian was a bystander to Sovlin's torture after all. Even now, he kept referring to Marcel as it, or the Predator. The sole reason I decided against backstabbing him was that I needed help. Rissel had saved Marcel's life, and wasn't so getting out of here was impossible without him. Not to mention that the veteran was stronger, well adapted to stress, and more adept at combat. The first officer seemed oblivious to my deliberation as he stepped away from the wheelchair. He reclaimed his firearm, brandishing it with shaking grasps. I was by far the least threatening entity in the room to his brain. Move the human into the chair, Slanik, Rissel grumbled. I can't. I'm too weak. You have to do it. I don't want to touch it. Grow up. He won't bite. Rissel huffed, but slowly knelt by Marcel. He reached out with a grasper and hissed in disgust as it touched sweat-soaked skin. His breathing devolved to sporadic gasps as the fear chemicals became unbearable. When he lifted the Predator, I worried his grip might falter. The human shouldn't be dropped, especially in his current condition. With eyes the size of moons, Rissel deposited my friend into the chair. Marcel yelped from the rough handling. My lip curled up without thinking, an instinctive warning not to hurt the Predator. Don't give me that look, Slanet. I'm trying my best. First officer spat. I don't see you doing anything helpful. I want to help. I'd do anything, really. I'm sorry. That was harsh. I apologize. Rissel took a deep breath and positioned himself behind the Predator. This is overwhelming for me, okay? Shit. Let's just get moving. Marcel was wheeled out of the cell by the trembling Kolshian, past the watching Zahn. I made eye contact with the doctor during my own exit. A Federation officer carting a wounded Predator away with a mesmerized Van Lille in tow. Suffice to say, it wasn't his desired outcome. The Takan seemed to be having an aneurysm at the sight of our posse.
You're making a big mistake. Humans are sociopaths. Murderers.
Zahn screeched. Rissel pointed at the doctor. You get in that cell and treat Sovlin. I'd prefer if he doesn't bleed out. The medic bared his teeth at us. He slunk inside with reluctance and began tending to the captain's injury with his kit. Rissel pressed a button outside the cell.
Damn it.
The door slid shut. Several clicks indicated that it locked
Look
behind
at my
us.
little skelly rings.
Clearly, the first officer didn't want his devious shipmates pursuing us or tipping us off to the crew. Realization flashed in the doctor's eyes, and he
I like
slammed
the little
paw on
bees.
the ball in frustration.
Why didn't I do that to you all?
Zahn wheeled. Rissel snorted, waving a shiny object. Because I have the key. The hint of a smirk played at Marcel's face, which showed he was still conscious. I was pleased to see him responsive, though I hoped he didn't start laughing. The last thing we needed was the first officer thinking the human was growling. It was going to be difficult to get a battered Predator not unnoticed as things were. Rissel, are the crew going to wonder why the Predator go loose? I asked. Won't they freak out? The first officer thought for a moment. He yanked the fire alarm and pressed the button on his holopad to trigger an evacuation order. An automated message relayed the command to abandon ship, while the overhead sprinklers doused us in cold water. This guy is smart, I'll give him that, I thought. Maybe he will be useful. Nobody would question an officer moving a high-value prisoner under emergency procedures. In his current state, Marcel appeared sedated, so that might limit panic too. Giddiness abounded in my mind at the thought of freedom. Returning home with my best friend might have been a trip to paradise as far as I was concerned. It felt like we had been given a new lease on life.
I need to stop
With
scraping and
uncertain
actually
steps,
start painting
Rissel
first.
guided us into the triple bay. Several
Get some
ear-piercing
pink.
screams with our greeting once the crewmates detected the half-conscious Predator. The way they pointed at Marcel made me seethe. The people nearest the entrance tripped over themselves in their haste to get away. The first officer ignored him, pushing Marcel toward an unoccupied shuttle. He carried the human with less overt fright this time. His delicacy as he placed the predator in the back seat surprised me. The fact that he noticed his prime mistake through the haze of terror showed a great deal of empathy. Roussel flicked the harness over Marcel's withered chest, which was forcing out shallow breaths. The Colchian felt the human's pulse. The concern in his eyes reignited my own worries. The heartbeat must have been rapid or erratic. The first officer found a blanket under the seat and draped it over the predator's barren form. It was undeniably a kind gesture. Roussel seemed to care. Whether he would admit it was another question. As reluctant as I was to forgive the officer for his role in Marcel's abduction, I was worried about what would happen to him next. We couldn't leave the man who saved us behind to hang for treason. Come with us. I jumped into the pilot seat, firing up the launch sequence. You can't stay here, Roussel. They'll have your hand. I'd rather face whatever the Federation has in store for me than live surrounded by humans. The first officer took a last look at Marcel, blinking rapidly. But I wish you both well. For the sake of us all, I pray you're right about this. Please. You don't have to say humans. I'm sure the Venlil will take care of you, and we can put you somewhere far away from them. For Marcel's sake, we have to dock at the outpost. Assuming it's still there, I thought. I'm not sure how the humans would react to Roussel's presence, but we can cross that bridge when we get to it. But that's not the point. I deserve to hang Slanek. The officer's composure crumbled, and he buried his face in his tentacles. I don't know what came over me back there. I'm a traitor. You stopped a murder. And now this is our only chance to stop a genocide. If Earth is attacked, there will be no chance of peace. Not now. Maybe not ever. The fate of the Federation hinges on what we do. Are you really going to sit that out? Roussel stepped off the craft, a torn look on his face. He stood motionless and pondered my words. No wise veteran wanted another predator enemy. That would ensure that the Federation lost the war. With a reluctant sigh, the first officer clambered back onto the ship. He squeezed into the back seat beside Marcel, leaning away from him. Regret was already etched on the Colchian's gelatinous features. I suspected this would be a long ride for our Federation savior.
Memory transcription subject. Governor Tava of the Venlo Republic. Date. Standardized human time. September 1st, 2136. My visit to the research outpost was intended to last half a day. At my request, Cho, my diplomatic advisor, had crafted a speech to show our solidarity with the UN. The whole afternoon was a joint ceremony in remembrance of the humans who sacrificed their lives in our defense. At the end of it, I would send off the predators who partook in our first civilian encounter. The volunteers of Doctors Without Borders and the Red Cross would board the initial outbound ship with their Venlo partners in tow. It was time for humans to receive a proper integration into our society, and that meant moving planetside. That was a less concerning prospect than it would have been before our experiments. There were zero reports of human and Venlo violence during the past 10 days. Most of the complaints against the Terrans involved the predators trying to stroke our curly fur, which I found bewildering. That wasn't behavior I saw them exhibit with each other, so it couldn't be written off as a social custom. Perhaps a display of possessiveness, but overall, the trial of our species living together was a pleasant success. More so than any scientists predicted. The predators had an uncanny ability to bond with anything, and that allowed them to forge close connections within days. My mind defaulted to thinking of Noah and Sarah as part of my in-group at this point. I never could have imagined, when this all started, that I would look forward to seeing them as I did now. So they're alive. Do you think they'll have good news? Sarah asked. The ceremony had come to an abrupt halt when General Kam informed the UN delegation of a pressing development. A Federation shuttle barged into Venlo territory and raised a series of alarms. Its pilot claimed to be the missing patrolman, Slanek. He kept repeating that his human companion needed medical attention in a hysterical voice. I would have kept it on the down low until we knew more, but Secretary General Maya wanted everyone aware of the situation. He believed that if the change of plans wasn't explained, rumors would spread that the AXA were attacking. The UN leader's presence was unexpected. We had never met in person or spoken beyond video messages, but it seemed when Ambassador Noah told him of my plans, he wished to attend the memorial firsthand. Many humans flocked to the docking port as the news dispersed. Everyone on the station was eager to welcome the arrivals. The crowd numbered several hundred once Venlo were ready to the count. Terran paramedics were on standby, and the media were swarming to report any developments. I knew why the Predators wanted to see the state of the captives. They were trying to decide if the Federation was an enemy. In the wake of my shocking admission, they wanted to know if coexistence was even possible. This was a good sign if the Federation military was civilized enough to hear a Predator out and set it free. I'm hopeful, guys. I swished my tail reassuringly. If the Federation met your Marcel fellow goal, maybe I was wrong. Maybe they can see you for the sensitive and wonderful species you really are.
I greenlit the plan for a preemptive strike days ago.
Maya's voice was slow and grovelly, flowing with a practiced cadence.
The General suggested that we needed to hit the key Gudjit launch points. I have no way of recalling our bombers, even if I wanted to.
Damn it all!
Noah cursed.
I knew we were too hasty. The Federation will see this as an unprovoked attack. We're going to ruin all chances of peace.
I patted the ambassador on the shoulder, hoping to quell his emotions. His brown eyes softened and he gave me an appreciative nod. There was no sense in lamenting what was already set in stone.
Oh, shit.
All we could do now was address the
wash
consequences
it off
together.
there.
Proximity alarms shrieked as our sensors detected an unknown vessel within bombing range. The UN General switched them off, then granted permission for the inbound ship to dock. A few Terran soldiers lingered near their officers with assault rifles in case of a trap. Their paranoia and suspicion.
Their anchor management issues. They're very different. Are the tiny cute creatures. That's a bad idea. Alright, as we were.
It soared to new heights since they learned the galaxy wanted to kill them. I didn't have the heart to tell them that such deception was a Predator's tactic. Playing at empathy would never be the Federation's modus operandi. The exterior airlock creaked open, and the Federation shuttle descended from the inky backdrop. It followed the station's landing beacon to glide through the opening and mounted its footings into the docking port with surgical precision. The craft wasn't big enough to fit more than 4 individuals, and that was if they stacked on top of each other. The soldiers relaxed, satisfied that an ambush force was ruled out. It only took a few seconds for the port to repressurize, but I could sense the humans' restlessness. Anxious murmurs cycled through the crowd, waiting on the cusp of certainty, fueled the darker side of their imagination. The partition between the reception area and the dock receded once the sensors determined it was safe. A silver-grey Venlil poked his head from the spacecraft, which drew a few cheers from all the people. A bandage wound its way around his ears, tying down the long black tuft of hair on his forehead. The wrappings were soaked through with rich orange fluid. That fresh bleeding suggested he needed medical attention himself. The human paramedics exchanged looks as there was no sign of their man. They showed that they were way past the Venlil. I could only see their backs, but they seemed to stiffen as they laid eyes on the interior. What had they seen that we had not? How severe were the humans' injuries? The Predators toted a stretcher inside and summoned the gurney to wait by the ship. Loud calls thundered above the chatter to clear a path. That meant Marcel was alive, but I had to wonder why he couldn't walk out under his own power. It also raised the question of how he incurred such a condition in the first place. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth. My God, what have they done?
I am more grateful to you than ever, Tava.
Noah breathed, shaken to the core.
I should have never questioned your decision. I see now what you've saved us from.
Similar cries erupted from the onlookers as the paramedics emerged with the captured human. Marcel's malnourishment was apparent at first glance. His skin hugged his bones tightly, and his stomach was a flat depression beneath his ribcage. I wasn't sure if it was the starvation or the vicious injuries that caused his breathing to sound so strained. The poor guy's face was mashed to a pulp, bruised and blooded. Whoever beat the human seemed to take particular offense to his binocular eyes. The way the sockets were turning black made my stomach flip. A metal band was fitted to his neck, and the skin beneath was marred with minor burns. Why was that choker still on him? Nobody had taken it off. The Venlil almost seemed more incensed than the humans. The thought of the Federation doing that to their buddy sparked a predatory rage. My own blood boiled at such a grave injustice. Noah was right. That would have been him if I allowed it. I was wavering on whether I wanted the humans to show mercy to my old friends after all. Stop filming this, I hissed at our media personnel. Show some respect. Maya crossed his arms.
No. Film it. On the condition that you'll show it everywhere. I want everyone to see this. to document how the Federation treated one of ours. When we declare war on these bastards, I don't want anyone saying it's for no reason.
Whoa, hold up. If they realize their mistake and let him go,
Noah whispered.
maybe they're sorry and wish to make amends.
They didn't realize anything.
Slanich's horizontal pupils snapped to orders as he overheard the ambassador's comment.
The captain was going to kill Marcel, and they're still planning to bomb Earth.
What stopped them from killing him? Did you talk them down? I asked in a soft voice.
I tried, Governor, but they wouldn't listen. We escaped by the skin of our teeth because of the first officer, Brissel. He incapacitated the captain and escorted us off the ship.
The Secretary General frowned.
What's happened to this Roussel?
I brought him with us, sir. He's on the ship. I can't get him to come out. This isn't, exactly what I promised him.
My ears swiveled toward the shuttle. I thought I could detect the sound of terrified whines amidst the commotion. Maya looked like he wanted to retrieve the first officer himself and was about to start in that direction. Though the grey-haired human didn't exude hostility, I feared he might escalate Marcel's emotions to a blinding panic. Let me handle this, I said to the humans. Noah, Sarah, you remember how hard it was for us? And there were only 2 of you. Maya glanced at the astronauts and fell back as their nods affirmed my words. I ducked into the spacecraft to look around. Huddled beneath the pilot's chair was a Kolshian male with a dark blanket over his head. It was a pitiful attempt at camouflage. It would be amusing at a brighter time. The movement of the fabric and the outline of his form were obvious giveaways. I imagined the human paramedics noticed Roussel, but were too preoccupied with Marcel to coax him out. Within closer range, the whines sounded more like muffled screams. I flicked my claws on the floor so Roussel would know the approaching person wasn't a human. The officer peeked out from under his tarp. His bulbous orange eyes lit up with recognition.
Governor Tarver,
Roussel exclaimed.
you're alive.
Of course I'm alive. What made you think I wasn't?
It's just, nobody has actually seen you in months. And this station is infested with predators. I saw them through the window, lurking, waiting.
It's not infested. And they have good reason to lurk. They were curious and worried, and now they're rather upset. Hell, I'm upset too.
Oh,
Ow.
please help me, Tarver. This is a nightmare, and I've done it to myself. I just want to wake up, you know? Kick me out of here. Please.
Calm down. Everything is all right now. Tell me, what is it that the humans are doing that's bothering you?
Slonic said there were just a couple. Tell me, 2 or 3 I could tolerate, but looking at all those predators, pure agony, feels like my chest is on fire. I don't know how you bear it.
I know exactly how you feel. It will pass.
You can't know that.
But I do. How about I introduce you to my first human friend? Just one of them.
Just one. Just one. One?
Roussel whined, rocking back and forth.
Okay. Just one.
The Kolshian was clearly on the brink of a nervous breakdown, but I decided to move forward with that tepid affirmation. This guy defied a superior officer and sacrificed his career to save a human. That wasn't a risk that someone took without good reason. There had to be some part of Roussel that already accepted the predator's true nature. It was a matter of getting through to him, of bringing his logical mind back into the equation. Whether it was reason or empathy that struck home, it didn't make a difference. Noah, come here, I called. The male astronaut hurried in, rushing to my side.
Is everything all right? What's going on, Tarver?
The first time I saw Noah, I thought he was feral. Can you imagine answering that hail? I waved a paw in the human's direction, and Roussel shuddered. All of his teeth are showing, and those murderous eyes looked like there was something out of a nightmare. He looked like the meanest, nastiest creature in the universe. The ambassador sighed.
Ah, Governor, you always flatter me.
Shush, I'm getting to the important part, I huffed. But anyhow, the human's words were about peace. There was such a disparity between that appearance and the things they said. My brain couldn't reconcile it.
I'm just saying, Tarver, you could fake the occasional compliment.
Noah shot me a coy smile. I had been around the predators too long if I could differentiate snarls, hadn't I?
Talk about my winning personality, my exquisite physique. Pretend you liked me?
I do like you. Stop fishing. At any rate, there was this collection of little things the humans did that made me think, maybe, the odd doubt. But looking at them dredged up all my worst memories, so I shut out that voice. I wanted them gone.
Then why did you stop Sovlin from getting rid of them? What happened?
Rissel stammered. I teared up, just a little, and the first thing Noah did was try to comfort me. I realized that I never gave him a chance. No unfeeling creature would pick up on emotional nuances like they do. That's when I knew. When did it click for you?
He. The instant Slanik showed signs of distress, Marcel tried to protect him. It was something he said, that he only cared for the Vendel's safety.
The Kolshian's eyes became distant, as though he was reliving the moment.
Even when the captain had a gun against his head, the Predator was trying to soothe his friend. And I believed him, if just for a moment.
You sensed it then, Rissel. You know that nobody could fake it that perfectly.
I know, but I feel...
Forget about the feel. You're going to walk out of here with me and Noah. We'll find you a room, and I want you to rest up.
And then?
Then we're going to determine who is responsible for what happened to Marcel. The humans will decide what to do about it. It's your decision, but I'd like you to speak to them. You represent the Federation, as far as we're concerned. Noah nodded.
As would I. We don't have to be enemies.
Rissel rose to unstable legs and dusted himself off. Those first steps into the open were tentative and frightful. He called his tail around mine for support. Venturing out through the sea of humans, many of whom were openly staring, must have been a daunting task, but he managed to hold back the scream which I sensed building in his chest. The officer lowered his gaze to the floor and marched ahead through the chemical fever. Perhaps this man was a spark of hope that not everyone would write humanity off on sight. I prayed that Earth would find other friends in the galaxy, and that our newfound ally would find the courage to prove that it was a possibility.
I need to be more comfortable with these.
Memory transcription subject, Slanik, Vendel Space Corps. Date, standardized human time, September 3rd, 2136. Nursing the human back to health became my obsession. The doctors were optimistic that Marcel would make a full recovery, but I was determined not to vacate his side. There was no way I was leaving his well-being to chance ever again. My claws tightened around the fore, stabbing into a block of tofu. The spongy protein folded into the prongs and I brought it up toward the human's mouth. My gaze lingered on the pointy canines beside his incisors, which looked perfect for tearing flesh. It felt unnatural, placing my paw so near to a predator's teeth while offering it food. A pins and needles sensation danced at the base of my toes, which I promptly ignored.
Sladdy, I can do this myself.
Marcel protested. The Predator was lounging in a hospital bed, propped up against some pillows. After a fresh shave and some washing up, my human looked more like his old self. A nosebleed concealed the deformed appendage, and stitches mended the gashes on his cheek. Fluids and medication were distributed intravenously, which brought life back to his complexion. I glared at him. But I'm not going to let you, and that's that. Marcel rolled his eyes, but allowed me to insert the protein between his lips. I scrutinized him as he chewed. It was wonderful to see him eating real food after his long hunger, but I didn't want to lose sight of the big picture. Human medicine was primitive compared to ours, the school of medievalism. My vigilance was the only hope of preventing complications. All I knew was that Marcel's diet was essential to his recovery. It was my intention for him to consume every calorie the medical staff gave us. I prepared a fork full of greens which looked scrumptious and herby and shoved it at him. The red-haired primate at his side. He took the plate from my stubborn paws and set it on the bedside table.
You've got to stop babying me. I'm fine with it, really.
The human began to sit up and grimaced as pain scorched across his ribs.
See? Good as new.
Tears welled in my eyes. No, you're not.
I'm on the mend. This is the new normal, and that's okay. I'm tougher than you think I am.
You're very strong, and resilient, and brave. But
What?
I almost lost you, Mars, and it scares me how much that hurt.
Oh, it's over now, Slanek. I'm never going to let anyone hurt us again, okay? Come again.
I curled up on the bed and pressed my chin on the Predator's thigh. Marcel reached out with his nimble fingers. The same hesitancy that always flashed on his face when he was worried about spooking me surfaced. His hand hovered over the back of my neck for several seconds, and my heart rate skyrocketed. What was he doing? My instincts despised the location of his paw and the way his nails were aimed in my head. It was a slash away from my throat. Everything about that body language mirrored a predator about to pounce. No amount of trust could alter those obvious cues. My eyes blinked shut. and I summoned all my willpower to remain still. I felt a light touch on my ear. The human palmed the right one gently, then moved to the other. The breath I didn't realize I had been holding in escaped. Marcel beamed when he saw me relax, and took that as encouragement to continue. His fingers darted beneath my chin and ruffled the fur by my throat. The human's claws nicked my skin. They were rather dull for a predator's offensive weapons. Oddly enough, it was more gratifying than painful. A happy meal emanated from my chest. I nuzzled against his side and flipped onto my back.
He was so cute.
He whispered. Without thinking, I had exposed my most soft and vulnerable organ, my stomach. Marcel tickled my belly with pleasure, which was quite the overwhelming sensation. I was embarrassed by my undignified squeals and laughs, but my control was slipping. I rolled around in delirium, thrashing and kicking. The human had to catch me when I almost tumbled off the bed. He winced from the abdominal strain, but refused to drop me. Affection and warmth shined in his eyes.
Am I interrupting something?
Sarah stood in the doorway, amusement on her face. She stared at me, the blankets on the floor, then back at me.
Actually, you were. But not what do you think?
Marcel chuckled.
What can I do for you?
You look better. We're all happy to see it.
She replied.
But I just wanted a quick word with Stanek alone.
I tilted my head at the scientist, confused. Have the humans decided to blame me for my inability to prevent Marcel's injuries? Did they think he would be better off with someone stronger and more competent at their civic duties? I couldn't fault them if that were the case. My human released his grip and gave me an encouraging wave. A paralyzing reluctance made me slow to follow Sarah, so I dragged my feet to a secluded spot in the hallway. A mature individual would accept the consequences of their unfairly, especially when that failure landed their best friend in critical condition and whisked away from death. I can't let him go, though. I slumped my shoulders. Look, Sarah, I'm so sorry for what happened to Mars. My best friend was terrorized by a madman, and I was nothing more than a liability. I take full responsibility for everything, and accept whatever the UN has decided. If there's anything that I can do to make it right.
Slow down.
The scientist raised a pale hand.
Nobody blames you, least of all Marcel. I think having you around is helping him immensely.
You do?
It's obvious. He's trying to hide it, but I figure he's in a lot of pain.
That's what I was worried about. So then, what is it you needed to speak to me about? Oh, stars. Is there bad news about Mars?
Perhaps. It's not clear yet. If I remember correctly, he was frightened of torture by aliens before this, yeah?
Sarah waited for my nod. She seemed concerned about how to phrase her next words.
I think you need to be worried about how humans react to trauma. Our brains often have difficulty processing it.
I studied her expression closely. What are you trying to say? Is Marcel going to go insane?
That's not a polite word, Slanek. Everyone reacts differently. Marcel could be fine, and I hope he is.
She said.
But after what he's been through, you must be prepared for drastic changes in mood and personality. He could become depressed, forgetful, irritable, or even hostile.
Hostile?
Nightmares and flashbacks are common in these cases. That can incite all sorts of negative reactions.
My eyes widened in surprise. It had never occurred to me that humans relived their worst experiences as vividly as we did. When I imagined how their brains worked, I always assumed it was different. No wonder Marcel was in a prolonged fog after watching the Arcs of Torture clips on the first day. Why would a predator have such an overblown fear response and cling to memories of prior threats? They were on the other side of that equation in nature. Even if humans descended from prey animals, they hadn't been that for millions of years. I guess it proves humans are just people, like us. That their emotions resemble ours. You didn't say negative, you said hostile, I pointed out. Sarah shuffled on her feet.
Well, the memories triggered our fight or flight response. Some people lash out with physical violence, though they don't mean to. I think that unlikely here, but it needs to be stated as a possibility.
My breath hitched in my throat, though I tried not to show my fright to the scientist. Physical violence? Being assaulted by a predator wasn't exactly on my bucket list. If a human lunged at me without warning, I doubted I could keep my composure. It would be tough to brush that off. The thought of Marcel with his meaty hands clenched around my windpipe stirred all of my subconscious fears, but I knew that wasn't him. My human hadn't tried to eat me even when he was starving. This mindless killer preserved my welfare to his own detriment and never displayed anything but kindness toward me. As long as it was unintentional, I decided I could forgive him for spontaneous violence. Sada deemed it improbable, so in all likelihood it wouldn't happen. The prospect of mental torture that would drive Marcel to violate his principles was more concerning to me. Why are you telling me this? I questioned. Maybe Sarah thinks I wasn't being supportive enough, or she'll teach me which signs to watch for. Human mannerisms are as alien gets.
I don't want you to fault Marcel or to think that it's proof that humans are evil. I know how frightened you and are of us. If any of those symptoms would be too much to deal with, it may be best that we find you a more suitable partner.
My ears flattened against my head. Is that what the Terran scientific community believed we thought of them? That we saw them as interchangeable demons and volunteered just to vindicate that conclusion? That's right. We risked our lives waiting for them to step up so we could say, "Gotcha," I thought sarcastically. There was nobody in the galaxy, human, Venlil or otherwise, more suitable than Marcel. Being around him was pleasant and easy. I wasn't going to discard him the second the challenge presented itself. You want me to leave him because he might be ill, I hissed. I don't want another partner. I want Marcel, and I'll deal with whatever happens.
No, no! We don't want you to leave. That's the opposite of what we want.
Sarah took a step back, trying to appear non-threatening.
But your feelings and well-being are important too, Sonic. You must not discount yourself out of some sense of guilt or obligation.
Obligation? I love him. Did you consider Marcel's feelings at all? To even suggest that I should abandon him right when he needs me the most? It's cruel. Heartless.
We are thinking of Marcel. Listen, he's in a fragile state right now. You are the main thing reminding him he is human, that someone cares for him. What would hurt him the most is to hear you call him a monster.
A furious growl rumbled in my throat. I would never. Short of him eating my family in front of me anyway. I hate that anyone would suggest otherwise.
Then I'll leave you be.
Sarah's voice was measured, but there was pleasure in her eyes at my response.
If you need anything, you know where to find me.
I flicked my ears in acknowledgement and scampered back to my human's chamber without hesitation. After the mention of being pried away from Marcel, all I wanted was to have him back in my sight. What if he had an episode while I was gone? Once he was in my periphery, I could rest assured that he was okay. Marcel had cleaned his plate during my absence and was seated on the edge of the bed. His predatory eyes were staring into space and blinking. There was the hint of a twitch by his lip, as if he were biting his cheek. The human jumped a little when I leapt onto the mattress, and I curled my tail around his wrist and noted how he slowly unclenched his fist.
Slanek,
He sighed.
I missed you.
Before, I had attributed his aloof moments to the primitive narcotics in the IVs, but in light of Sarah's words, it was apparent that a different culprit was to blame. I felt ashamed of myself for not picking up on the cues sooner. My preoccupation with his physical injuries caused me to overlook the obvious. What were you thinking about just now? I blurted.
I should bring the other one down.
You don't want to know.
I do. You can tell me anything, Mars.
Not this.
Try me. His gaze darkened.
I'm thinking I want to kill Sovlin.
Get in line.
I'm quite serious. I was fantasizing about it. Does that make me a bad person? A bloodthirsty predator?
That should not take over his death. It's not fair that he got away scot-free. You're a good person who's trying to process something terrible. And yes, has more aggressive instincts. You didn't deserve any of what he did to you.
Thanks, buddy.
You don't have to thank me. I should have asked you about your mental health sooner. How did those memories make you feel? Are you able to talk about it?
I don't know. When Sovlin was about to shoot me, I felt relief that it was over. Profound relief. I was ready for him to pull the trigger. I was only sorry that he had to see it, and that his aunt was kidnapping you because of me.
Don't worry about me. All that matters to me is that you're here, and you recover.
That's why I need you to let me push myself, Slanek. I heard we're going to war with the Gajits, and I want to join. Even if it's just to fly a ship over in logistics, I need to be cleared for action.
But you're safer here. Why would you want to risk your life again so soon?
To go after Sovlin, to deal with my anger, all of it. I have to do something, and I didn't know how to tell you. It's being idle that drives me mad.
Fine.
You know what? Let's keep this one.
The human blinked.
We?
I'm coming with you if I have to stow away in your duffel bag. You can't get rid of me that easily. Marshdick listened in Marcel's hazel eyes, and a low chuckle rumbled from his vocal cords. A silent vow formed in my mind that I would protect them better this time around, even if it meant shipping off to an active war zone surrounded by trained predators with guns. Something told me that I wouldn't be the only Fenrir tagging along for the humans' war efforts. Though there was no formal declaration from the government yet, I think we had chosen a side. The fates of our species were intertwined, for better or for worse.
Memory transcription subject. Captain Sovereign, Federation Fleet Command. Date, standardized human time, September 3rd, 2136.
There we go.
It was a
Well,
mental
looks like you're going-
sweeping the ship for any stragglers who found the doctor and I caged in the beast's filthy pen. The reek of waste and blood had been overpowering in the cell. A sickening reminder
I
that
need
the
another
predator walked
color.
those very
Doo-dah,
floors.
doo-dah.
It felt
I'm gonna be
very
something other than
and
blue.
with no company but the soaking dark. I could still see Marcel's hideous face when I closed my eyes. My heart seized at the thought of those sunken eyes, soulless and scorching. The sound of the human's voice grating in my ears as he tried to offer some deceitful words was unforgettable too. When I saw my first officer chumming it up with that savage, it was no wonder I saw red. What a nightmarish creature it was, I thought. How could anyone ever care for
Let's go with this one.
myself
Turquoise is pretty
and
close to what I have
struggle
on there
with
now,
driving
so.
my leg ever could. I had taken the Colchian under my wing for decades and mentored him into a confident officer that commanded respect. How could he shoot me? For that animal, after what the Federation had endured, wasn't I entitled to a few minutes of retribution? The human suffering paled in comparison to the children mauled as arks of toys, of the worlds raised in radiation and fire. The first officer's most offensive statement was comparing me to the Arxer. Since when was protecting my crew from an existential threat a crime? Everyone would be happier with one less human crawling the universe, other than the Venlil, I suppose. They needed to be rescued before the predators sank their claws any deeper.
Sovlin,
Zan growled.
the Prime Minister is on the line. Are you well enough to speak to her?
It was arduous to round up the crew from various shuttles, but we managed to put the band back together. Placing a medical official with no combat expertise as acting first officer wasn't my first choice, but I needed someone who would support me on matters of human policy. Keeping the crew on a leash was my primary objective. I raised my hobbled leg, studying the azure-stained bandage. Of course I am. Rousseau blew off a limb and not my head. Put her on screen. The video call flickered to life, revealing a glaring Piri.
Sovlin, tell me how you managed to lose a predator in the mere days since your last check-in. The Federation is going to freak out.
Word of Tarva's folly travelled around the Federation within days after we detained our unwelcome guest. Panic was spreading through civilian channels, and public pressure was mounting for an immediate response. Galactic leaders arranged for an emergency convention to discuss joint action, but it would take days for everyone to arrive at the designated meeting spot. More time would be squandered coordinating the forces of hundreds of independent powers. The Khajiit Union was not content to sit on its paws while vacillating foes debated the obvious choice. Destructive measures were necessary at once, before the humans lashed out at the Venlil. We were en route to a Khajiit border station to rendezvous with our bombing partners. Launching for Earth felt like my destiny. I was ecstatic to join the mission.
You just ran out of camera, Andre.
The escapees wouldn't have had time to warn humanity, so our attack would come as an unexpected blow.
Oh my God.
Now that humans were spacefaring, it was unlikely to eliminate them entirely, but with any luck, their numbers would be reduced to insignificance, and the remnants would wipe each other out with their aggression. The damn predators would have smeared on the name of sentience.
Must your head be always elsewhere? I demand an answer, Captain.
Piri hissed.
How did the predator escape?
I don't know how to say this, but First Officer Vissel shot me and released it, I answered. The Prime Minister recoiled in shock.
Rousseau? Why? He's served a D for decades. He's practically Khajiit at this point. What pushed into such reckless action?
The humans seem to have an ability to charm others that we didn't account for. They appear to be able to manipulate empathy and to pretend to be like the rest of us. My first officer said I was being unfair to the Flesh Eater, if you believe that.
Well then, I'll put out a warrant for Rousseau's arrest. I'm sure the Koshans will side with us. There's no excuse for the veteran who just watched our briefing videos releasing a human.
She tapped the key buttons on her console, most likely penning a transmission to the Federation.
At least we've gathered some key information from Mr. Barkle. The humans are more intelligent than the Greys and more cooperative.
With respect, ma'am, what makes you say that?
The Arxer would have never made it into space without our interference. But these monkeys did it without outside assistance.
I suppose you're right.
That only makes their schemes and ruses more complex. They seem quite capable of mirroring empathetic responses.
Indeed. Let's not forget Sovlin. The Venlil are one of the weakest and most emotional races in the galaxy. And that's by our standards. The humans will enjoy turning on them.
My thoughts exactly. Whatever Tava or Isel say, the only good human is a dead human. And I'm going to see to it that there's a lot of those by next week.
I commend your courage. Oh, and Captain, be warned that we've lost contact with 2 military outposts that were slated to join the bombing run. Our scouts are going to look in, but I'd stay alert.
I flared my nostrils in dismay. The humans would have had to know about our scheme days ago to launch any countermeasures, and that was inexplicable. Clairvoyance wasn't a predator trait, to my knowledge. Tava wouldn't be idiotic enough to tell humanity about the Federation's earlier plans, would she? That would be begging for retribution. Venlil involvement.
I'm gonna have to get the other one.
According to my files.
Alright, I'll be right back. I gotta get the other flower pot stand. Doing nothing with my life as I step closer to death. There we go.
Proximity to their borders.
There
They
we go.
prodded the Federation to act quicker. For decades, our leaders spent dawdling, trying to get visitors to advance. Perhaps the humans had kidnapped some Vendel quietly and were torturing them out of Tava's eye. There were a myriad of ways they could have obtained the information. I'll report it if I hear anything. It could be the Arxa, though it's impeccable timing if so, I said. Piri flipped her ears.
Perhaps. Is it that there's almost hopeless to graze? Ah, take care of yourself, Sovlin.
The call blinked out, and I turned my attention to the viewport. The blue dot on screen was an unnamed Gajit colony with a population of around 20,000. Its border location lacked appeal for potential settlers due to the inherent peril. Its only drawing point was dirt-cheap housing. The humans will push everyone closer to home soon enough. Our resources are already strained with a single enemy, I pondered. Our military launch point was lodged on a large asteroid just beyond the colony's orbit. It functioned as a hub for bomber squadrons and defensive units. I spotted a few Gajit patrol ships adrift in the system's outer reaches. Spacecraft were ready to fight at all hours of the day in case of any acts of incursions. Everything appeared to be normal, but Piri's warning lingered in my mind. Predators loved stealth and ambush tactics. If our attackers were the humans, that was more proof that they were the same as the Greys. It was their nature to catch others off guard and helpless. Halt out of docking range, I shouted. Scan the perimeter for ship activity. Better safe than sorry. It could do no harm to supplement our station's intel from a different vantage point. Sensors didn't reveal any subspace disruptions or gravitational disturbances at first glance. However, there were a few stray radio signals by the system's gas giants that seemed peculiar. That caught my attention, and I decided it merited further investigation.
What are those coordinates you've input? Why return in the viewport?
Zahn asked. I tapped my claws nervously. Nothing, I hope. We'll see soon enough. Zooming in on the source of the EMF anomaly, a formation of angular ships became visible. Gasps sounded across the bridge. My spines raised in an instant, and I gaped at the startling image. How could an enemy have gotten within the system unseen? Lurking near celestial bodies with high masses to evade detection was possible, in theory, but there wasn't a more dangerous place to disengage warp. While a strong gravitational field masked an incoming subspace trail, it would leave the ships at risk of being drawn into orbit. It would require incredible patience as well. To avoid discovery, those vessels needed to engage in a series of tiny jumps. That was the only way to ensure that their trail didn't poke into real space at an unwanted moment. Did those ships really hop between high gravity spots and wait for their drive to respool each time? Not utilizing continuous warp transit would increase travel time tenfold. That's no AXA strategy, I thought. These humans learn quickly, and it seems they gamble with their lives. Knowing the Terran position, the computer was able to tease out sensor readings. A rough estimation of their capabilities would help us concoct a plan of attack. What is their shield capacity? I barked. Zahn's eyes stretched wide in panic.
I don't know. How do I read this shit?
I miss Rizal immensely. Let me see. With a sigh of irritation, I pulled up the data feed on my workstation. Why, the primitive... Not a trace of ion generators. I don't think they figured out how to power shields.
Sounds like great news. What are your orders, sir?
The doctor asked. My disappointment with the Zahn was already mounting. Alaki wasn't what I desired deep down. I wanted a first officer with their own ideas, who was willing to challenge me when their thoughts were contrary. The thought of Rizal wasting in a cell while being toasted over a fire by the humans felt like such a damn waste. Fine man who threw away his career over some misplaced idealism. Charged the railgun, but slow and subtle. We don't want to alarm the humans. A sharp pain stabs in my leg, the first sign of the painkillers waning. In the meantime, let's amplify and intercept those radio signals. I think two of the ships are talking to each other. While Zahn stood around like a lost child, the comm station pounced on my order. Static fed through the PA, an incoherent buzzing. The technicians took a few moments to fine-tune the settings, and my ears perked up in anticipation. Catching the predators red-handed, gloating over the prospect of eating and torturing sentients would squash any doubts. It should even be enough to win back the Ben Lil. I wondered if Tarva knows about the cheap tactics her friends employ. I mused. What does she say in these skin-eaters? She'll be begging us to take the Venno back by tomorrow.
Me? Too harsh on them.
A thunderous voice echoed over the loudspeakers, sinking into its captive audience. It was so quiet on the bridge that you could hear a pin drop.
The Arks are traumatized the Xenos, and we're just making it worse. They'll think we're just like them, Sani. This'll be their proof.
They're going to attack Earth if we don't.
Came the tired reply.
It's a military base, nothing more. It's fair game. Maya didn't put any civilian targets on the list.
But the Khajiits haven't done anything yet. There's still time for them to change their mind. We should have tried to negotiate.
Raj, are you mad? They would drop bombs on London, Mumbai or Lagos without even thinking for a second. They don't want to talk to us.
I know. I just signed on to fight the Arks, and now, it's not like I imagined.
This is not the time for second thoughts. We'll offer medical assistance to any survivors. I'm certain the UN and the Van Lille will try to broker peace. But right now, this is about surviving. This is about humanity.
I blinked in confusion. Much of my crew looked dazed, as though they were having trouble processing the conversation. From the two humans' words, you would think it was the Khajiits who were the villains in this scenario, not the stealth ships creeping in on a clueless station. Why were those Predator pilots talking like they felt sorry for us? Why did both of them sound like they wanted peace, as though it were their own objective? Soft old Phil, I cursed myself. How did you almost focus on the basic trap? It must be some sort of trickery, an empathetic ploy in case anyone was listening in. If we hesitated to shoot a human craft, that gave them a strategic advantage. There was no other reason to talk and give away...
If you get a second, hit me with a thumbs up, because it is always appreciated for my ego.
After prolonged exposure to their smooth tongues. Turn that off, I hissed. Delete all records of that conversation. They're trying to manipulate us.
But how could they know we were listening, Sovlin?
The comms technician asked.
What if they actually meant that, and we just keep trying to harm them?
Humans don't understand what peace means, you numbskull. They're parroting something that Van Lille told them. The young analyst scowled.
Sir, you have the authority to get our station to stand down. I think we should hail them and offer a truce. Then we can see what they do. At least that way we have no regrets.
I have no regrets as it is. If you want to talk to Predators, you can get on a shuttle and fly over there yourself. The words Predator seemed to snap the crew out of their trance, and I saw a few tail waves of agreement. The technician shuffled on his paws before he pressed the delete button on his station. A high-pitched beep disrupted the silence, showing our weapons were charged and operational. I leaned back in my chair. Fire the railgun. The humans aren't getting this system.
Fire at who?
Jemik, my weapons officer, pointed at the viewport in horror.
Where did they go?
My eyes widened in panic. The colony. They're making a run on the colony. Damn it, I knew it was a distraction. I fired off a transmission to the station, warning them of the ambush. My heart felt heavy. I prayed that my communique reached them in time. My recommended course of action was to divert defenses to the colony and prepare for an orbital raid. The humans claimed that they were attacking the base, but even if that were the stated mission, Predators couldn't resist landing the killing blow on a hapless prey once in range. The colony was a much juicier target. A solemn silence gripped the bridge as we turned our own course toward the planet. Even with such a small population, there was no way we could evacuate in time. My stomach flipped at the thought of needless death, of another atmosphere choked in flame. This wasn't my first siege, but it never got easier. We had to stop the humans from continuing the Arx's legacy of destruction.
No.
Memory transcription subject. Captain Sovlin, Federation Fleet Command. Date, standardized human time, September 3rd, 2136. Worst case scenarios cycled through my mind as the Khajiit ships formed a defensive wall around the colony. I tried to imagine how the people on the ground felt, trapped and aware of the impending assault. This sea of dots spanning the blue orb circumference was all that stood between the innocent and hungry predators. Any angle that was overlooked was an opportunity for the humans to break through. We would stop any missiles from penetrating our ranks by throwing our craft in the way, if necessary. The only way a battle with the Predator ended was with all of them dead. Or all of us dead. The primitive nature of the human craft was our primary hope. A single hit should be enough to dispatch their ships. Hell, the station's lasers might be able to chew through more than one at a time. Our weaponry was designed to tear through outer armor, and the Terran's defenses were negligible.
Sir, the ships have reappeared just out of targeting range.
Jimmick barked, a tremor in her voice. I hoped the weapons officer could keep her wits.
On a trajectory course for the base.
The viewport locked onto the hostiles. I watched as they veered off onto multiple headings and altered their course to avoid any intercepting ships we launched. A laser lanced out from the station, a streak of brilliancy across the void. The shot connected with the Terran bomber and obliterated the Predator craft in a flash. Happiness fluttered in my chest, though it was tempered by nerves. It was encouraging that we had attained the first kill of the war. The humans, in response, spewed plasma at the approaching Khajiit ships. They seemed to walk that would ward us off, like banishing a torch to keep the beast at bay. Weapons of that caliber couldn't deal more than minor damage, but I knew they had to preserve their main payload for their target. It occurred to me that we had simplified the task of bombing the station for the humans. The Predators were flooring it toward their stated target, and in many ways my suggestions cleared the path. There wasn't a single sign of deviation, which boggled my mind. The asteroid base dispatched as many ships as it could and left its own defenses barren in the process. When given the choice, our commanders prioritized civilian lives over military infrastructure. Things can be replaced. Stations can be rebuilt, I chided myself. Lives cannot. There are children down there. I couldn't help but wonder for a split second if this was a lapse in judgment on my part. Where was that predatory sadism, the one Zahn said humans used on their own world? The last thing I wanted was to cost the Khajiit Union valuable resources. It was worse if some soldiers didn't make it from their barracks. Their deaths would weigh on my conscience for years. But there was no way a predator could override their bloodlust, particularly while engaged in warfare. It was a matter of time before the humans rounded on our position. At least a few ships had to give in to temptation, even if the majority could resist. Shoot the bastards! Blast them out of the sky! I roared. Jemmick sighed.
I just said they're out of range, sir. We need to move closer.
We are not abandoning our position. The second the planet is vulnerable, they'll pounce. My mind yearned to fight the humans myself, but I had to remember the stakes at hand. We were consigned to watching, as though this skirmish was some spectator sport. Zahn was cheering each time a Terran vessel went up in a fireball, which earned strange glances from the nearest crew. The Predators weaved erratic patterns to avoid termination, but their spirals and zigzags weren't fast enough. Every crackle of the laser purged one of the vermin. The station's defenses were slow to recharge, but their effectiveness was dazzling. In fairness, it seemed a Luftwaffe could take out a Terran ship. The workmanship was rather flimsy. Khajiit craft remained hot on the humans' heels and spit our own concentrated plasma at them. There was no breathing space for our attackers. The Predators rocketed up to max acceleration and towed a tighter line toward the base. It was wonderful to see our ships chasing the humans. How the tables had turned from the natural order. The hunter was the hunted.
Captain, the Predators are showing no interest in the colony. I don't see the harm in taking a few ships at the battlefield.
Jimmick pressed. They're just trying to lose their pursuers. If they can bait us away from the colony's defense, that's what they want. Her spines bristled.
I hate feeling powerless.
As do I.
Oh,
Zahn,
shit.
why don't you make yourself useful? I gestured toward the doctor, who was transfixed by the battle. Establish contact with Piri if at all possible. Make her aware of the Predator's tactics so she can relay a warning to all nearby installations. The Takan returned an eager tail swish and scrambled to reopen communication lines. My gears darted back to the viewport. I looked just in time to catch a glimpse of a Terran fighter taking a round to the belly. The plasma compromised its hull integrity and reduced it to a fractured heap of metal. There was no hesitation from the Gajit chasers to bombard the incapacitated ship with fire. Nobody would be foolish enough to leave the Predator alive. They needed to be taken out of the fight with permanence. As long as such a monster was still kicking, they could have a final trick up their sleeves. The human vessels clustered back together and opted to deal with the gaining pursuers one at a time. They peppered the closest Gajit ship with fire and concentrated their strikes in its drive column. The patroller's engine went up in a colossal flare. Debris was flung in all directions. Our other allies were forced to drop back to avoid getting swept up in the blast's wake. Stars! I hate humans, I seethed. They don't quit or retreat. I curse my ancestors for not confirming their extinction centuries ago. This is going to be a tedious and costly war. Even if we win, the Predators had endured a hailstorm of fire and pressed nearer to the base all the same. No matter how many of their brethren were reduced to scrap, they persevered. Watching the humans' fearlessness, I couldn't help but envy their natural disposition. They shrugged off losses with that callous disregard for life they were so famed for. We felt our casualties. That was the Federation's downfall against the Arxa. It was emotion that lost us the war. Predators saw only the mission, the kill.
Captain, we have to do something.
Jimmy growled. I flicked my ears. It's too late. They're almost within orbital range. While the Gajit defenses could deal with the humans handily, they wouldn't win the race against time. The Predators could survive just long enough. Pesky monsters. Sensing that their goal was within reach, our opponents found a final burst of speed. The elite bombers dispensed their payloads and cylindrical missiles zoomed in on the asteroid's surface. I braced myself for the inevitable aftermath. The Gajit patrollers lunged forward in desperate pursuit, but they were already too late. Explosions detonated across the complex, tearing through the expansive stone buildings. Flame enveloped anything in the explosion's proximity, and smoke plumes pushed up within the artificial atmosphere. Hangar roofs caved in, and buried any ships we failed to get off the ground. The powerful laser was out of commission too, since our orbital defenses were tucked in the center of the base. Bunkers and training areas were pummeled into submission. I wondered how many servicemen were trapped beneath the rubble. The humans followed up their first volley with another barrage. There was no pause or emotion, though I don't know why I thought there would be. The subsequent explosions ensured that nothing was standing, and reduced any likelihood of survivors. The horror on the bridge was a choking atmosphere. Amidst my grief, I couldn't help but feel responsible for this calamity. Our local garrison could have stopped them, if there had been a few more ships at our disposal. Why are the humans not turning toward the colony? They're alive, and I think still have some bombs. They should come to us any minute now. The Predator ships dipped away, but were unable to shrug off their pursuers. The Terrans branched off on individual courses. They knew we couldn't chase after all of them. Some of those vile creatures would escape. Wait. I shook my head in disbelief. They can't be leaving. The humans did exactly what they said. My head swiveled in the direction of the voice. It was that unruly comms analyst from earlier. They never intended to attack any civilians. They just annihilated a military base. And that's your reaction, I snarled. None of the evidence suggests that they wanted to. We forced their hand, the technician growled. I glowered at the scene in the stars, considering the Predator's departure. What more evidence did one need beyond looking at their faces? Their blood-stained history was just the icing on the cake, confirming what our eyes already knew. The humans could be faking a retreat to lull us into a false sense of security. The bombers were still within close range of the asteroid, and it would take them a while to escape the system. Their strategy could be to double back after we assumed they were leaving. That, or our considerable presence by the colony dissuaded them from heeding their impulses. These creatures were more intelligent and slightly more self-aware than the Arxa. They must have recognized that they were outmatched. That was a sufficient explanation, wasn't it? I forced myself to lower my hackles. What's your name, kid? Rumi. Rumi. I respect your drive to question everything, even common knowledge, but this isn't the right cause to fight for. If humans were a species of any merit, do you think that the Federation would have dug up some argument to spare them in decades of study? I don't know. Think about it. That goes to anyone agreeing with the young man here. And yes, we did force their hand. We forced the humans to concede civilian targets because of our overwhelming force. How so? We're in the wrong place. We're in the right place. Our presence deterred the humans from attacking anything else. Everyone should be proud of themselves today. We saved 20,000 lives. Rumi slumped his shoulders.
If you say so.
I imagine our allies had grown as restless as my crew. Seeing that the promise of the humans raiding the colony wasn't panning out, some captains may be tempted to pursue the fleeing ships. Sensors indicated that many were gearing up their drives and that our meticulous formation was dissolving. Now was not the time for this. The predators were still in the system. All we needed was a few minutes of patience to save the colony. I leaned over my microphone. Ghajeed vessels, hold your positions. Do not let the humans bait you into weakening our defenses.
I'm not just sitting here, damn it.
A voice pierced through our encrypted military channel.
We're going to attempt a search and rescue and render medical assistance to anyone alive.
My eyes darted about the viewport, searching for any signs of movement. A Ghajeed hospital craft had tripped away from our ranks and commenced a blazing run toward the base. Its course placed it directly in the path of an escaping human. Sensors read that the Tenant ship had target locked the vessel, and their weapons were charging. Turn back now, I pleaded into the comms. You won't be rescuing anyone if you're turned to slag. I will escort you myself when the humans are gone. The first responders pressed forward in defiance and diverted their central power to shields. The fleeing predator held a plasma round, which deflected off our ship's nose. The medical transport soon shaken by the contact, though it refused to turn back. The distance between them and those things was narrowing. This was lunacy. What were those Ghajeed doctors thinking? I admired their commitment to saving lives, but they were setting up the exact scenario I feared. Abort! I shrieked into the communicator, broadcasting the message in all frequencies this time. Ghajeed medical vessel, turn back at once. The predators will destroy you. There was no reply from the Ghajeed first responders. They were unarmed, which meant they stood no chance in combat. Worse, the Terran ship might have heard my plea and realized what an easy target they stumbled upon. I waited to see the doctors blasted to bits, feeling pity swell in my chest. On the bright side, at least it would draw some sense into Rumi and whoever else was swayed by him. The expressions around the bridge were finally the ones I recognized from our face-offs with the Arxa. For some inexplicable reason, the human ship hesitated. Sensors suggested that their weapons were powering down and they were altering their course to avoid a collision. I was certain my eyes deceived me as the primates allowed the medical ship to pass their position.
What about that, Captain? What could they possibly gain?
Ruby hissed. I chewed my claws.
Ah, shit!
Allowing the vessel to survive that aimed to resuscitate enemy combatants was in direct opposition to the predator's goal. Why would those abominations exhibit mercy? That was the exact brand of illogical softness we were mocked for by the Arxa, but accepting any explanation that mandated emotion was out of the question. There had to be an ulterior motive at play. There just had to be. Like I told the crew, the Federation condemned humanity by unanimous vote. They wouldn't make that decision lightly. Perhaps I wasn't looking at the big picture. The humans need the Ven Nul for now. They can't afford to alienate their lone ally when they're so behind technologically. I soothed myself. Torva must have sent someone to supervise, so they managed to show restraint. They're biding their time. Alarm flashed through Rumi's body language as he saw me struggling to formulate a response. The doctor rolled his eyes in disgust and turned to address us all.
They wanted to preserve ammunition when they realized the ship wasn't a threat.
Zan answered for me.
Humans are pragmatic enough to override their sadism when it comes to their own survival.
Quite possible. I managed to keep my voice steady. The predators were doing an excellent job messing with my head, if nothing else. Whatever game the humans are playing at, we know their true colors. We always have, and we always will.
I should use a bigger brush, but I'm not. Do I have a bigger
Memory
brush?
transcription subject. Governor Tarver of the Ven Nul Republic. Date. Standardized human time. September 5th, 2136. The essential Terran dignitaries were present in the meeting hall alongside the top-ranking Ven Nul staff. I settled down in the chair between Noah and Cam, which was turning into the typical seating arrangement. There was satisfaction in finding the Predator's presence so normal and routine. The importance of this conference could not be understated. The UN was determining which parties to take action against in the Federation, and whether diplomatic avenues could prove a suitable alternative to violence. There was no reversing the war against the Ghajeeds. The damage done to their repute by Sovlin was catastrophic, but perhaps not everyone had to get suckered into this shit show. That was why I hoped Roussel would show at the meeting. The Federation officer hadn't left his room since his arrival, and had barely picked that the mails were delivered by his door. My attempt to speak with him were met with a half-hearted go away. It was all I could do to inform him of the planned start time and remind him once more on my way to the assembly hall. In case the Kolshian did accept our invitation, we wanted to make him as comfortable as possible. The humans were wearing opaque visors to conceal their eyes and surgical masks to obscure their menacing snarls. The UN personnel were quite accommodating. It would likely be standard procedure for any future first contact. My eyes flickered over to Noah. Without the predatory features to buff up the humans, they looked squishy and weak. Those hands were more attuned to picking berries or climbing trees than combat, which was probably close to the truth. They lacked any form of camouflage for stealth, and weren't that quick. Even their smell and hearing was subpar. What kind of predators are they? They always mention tools when asked, then changed the subject, I thought. Perhaps they're ashamed of their natural weakness.
I look ridiculous in this Tava. I prefer a full helmet rather than this cyborg doctor cosplay.
Noah hissed. I stifled a laugh. I understood half of what you said. But this allows you to drink water, and I hope it's less stuffy. He must have been miserable on that first TV appearance.
Oh, I think I was just trying to remember to breathe. You have no idea how in awe we were.
The ambassador leaned back in his chair and waved a hand for emphasis.
I realized how important that moment was. Sometimes I still think to myself that I dreamed it all.
It is like a fever dream, isn't it? It's all so strange. Oh, speaking of strange, there's something I've been meaning to ask you.
Go on.
We've noticed some unusual behavior from your human volunteers. Mildly concerning.
Dear God, what have we done?
Just all sorts of bizarre reports which I'm increasingly baffled by. Multiple cases of humans speaking in high-pitched voices when asking Ben Will to do things, or even saying hello.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Giving us toys that make ear-piercing squeaks when touched. Sometimes throwing objects and begging us to retrieve them. I don't understand the purpose.
That would be demeaning. Sorry about that.
And you're so obsessed with our fur. Always trying to touch it and talking about how soft it is. Some people suggested you wanted to harvest it. Noah recoiled, and I figured his eyes were wide with horror.
Nothing like that. We just, like cute animals?
Why?
It sparks our nurturing instincts, releases dopamine, which makes us happy.
But you don't do any of that.
You're a planetary leader, and I'm a terrifying beast to you. You'd be wholly inappropriate and unprofessional. Though I confess, as for the last one, the thought has crossed my mind.
You don't scare me anymore, Noah. But if you must, I'd prefer you try any fur petting on Cam than me. I'd get a laugh seeing him bite your head off.
Deal.
Cam glared at us, clearly eavesdropping in our conversation.
Don't even think about it, Tava. It's going to be your fault if Noah loses a finger or two.
Good thing I have 10 of them.
Noah stretched his hand in the military advisor's direction, and the Van Mill jumped up from the table. The human brought his arm back to his chest with a laugh.
I'm kidding, Cam. I'd only do that if you asked me to.
Secretary General Laya broke off his conversation with his generals.
Well, I see we're all wonderful at sitting still, aren't we, Ambassador Williams?
We were just playing around.
Noah replied.
I see that. A lot of mature adults here.
The UN leader heaved an exasperated sigh. I was no expert in human body language, but his posture screamed of exhaustion.
Right. This meeting was supposed to start 10 minutes ago. No sign of Roussel. Let's get started.
I pulled up the briefing material on my holopad and refreshed my memory one last time. The human generals had forwarded a proposition for a ground invasion of the Gajid homeworld. I'd given it a cursory review in advance of this gathering and discussed with my advisors what our role should be. It was ironic, since I knew what those plans were derived from. They were offshoots of the original tactics we drew up together to invade the Arxa. Brandishing those ideas against our former allies, which were designed to raid sentient farm worlds, felt dirty. There were some modifications stressing the preservation of civilians where possible. I was surprised to see the humans adhering to their warfare rules under the circumstances. The stated objective was to capture government leaders and to force the Gajidi Union's capitulation. I couldn't disagree that the only way to bring them to the negotiating table was at gunpoint. They'd amassed an annihilation force from the discovery of a single human.
I take it we're all familiar with this operation. It is an ambitious task, I know.
General Zhao stated. General Jones tugged at her mask.
But ground fighting and atmospheric warfare, that's our territory. I'm confident in our chances.
The problem is which ships to use for the battle above. To transport a proper amount of soldiers.
Zhao finished.
Candidly, our ships just don't cut it in any way.
You'll use Venlo ships for whatever you need for now, and that's final. We'll give you our blueprints too, so you can build yourself a proper armada. I glanced at Noah for support and was relieved to see an encouraging nod. With our knowledge in hand, I know you can make improvements in our designs. It will help us both in the long run. I don't wish to keep anything from you anymore.
That's very generous of you, Governor. Thank you.
Maya said.
We will repay.
The door creaked open, which about made me jump out of my fur. Our violet skins, Kolshin slunk into the room and surveyed the occupants with hesitancy. I was grateful the humans had kept their face coverings on. Even with the precautions, the Federation officer was trembling. My ears perked up. Roussel, we didn't think you were coming. Please, sit down. It was promising that he showed up, since he was the best hope of peace. Then again, he was a wild card. Roussel could outright insult the humans and inflame the situation. I don't think the UN representatives, or for that matter, any Venlil present, would take kindly to a defense of Sovlin's actions either.
I wasn't sure I would come myself.
The Kolshin sighed.
But we must all live with the choices we make. Here I am.
It's come to our attention that you find it hard to look at us.
Secretary General Maya gestured to his facial attire.
We've elected to wear these visors so that you don't feel that we're staring at you. Does that help?
Roussel waved his tail.
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you. You have the sincere gratitude of our planet for your heroism and compassion. Knowing your feelings toward predators, I suspect you will decline my offer. But we are more than willing to get you asylum on Earth, should you so desire.
I appreciate the offer. You diverge from the Arxer in many ways that I have seen. But I don't think I could ever live among you.
We understand. If you truly cannot abide our looks, I mean, it's hurtful, but not unexpected.
Maya's words about the sting of the galaxy's cold-shouldered treatment ran true. My mind flickered back to how wounded Noah looked when he learned that the Venlil planned to kill humanity. The crestfallen look on his face when I described my initial impression of him to Roussel. Maybe I shouldn't have been quite so honest, even if he'd soothed the first officer. The Yemen played it off as a joke, but I suspect he did need some kind words on occasion. It must be awful to be shunned as a monster constantly, to feel rejected and unwanted, to have every action under a microscope. Noah had been dealing with Venlil gawking or panicking at the sight of him for months. Did he understand that I cared for him despite my instinct? I patted Noah on the hand absent-mindedly, and he squeezed my paw in return. Roussel drew a deep breath.
All right. What else do you want of me?
Coexistence is all we seek from anyone.
Maya replied.
I don't know how to achieve that from a federation that seeks to genocide humanity. I'd like your opinion, because my own outlook is quite bleak.
Some in the Federation might be open to hearing your case if they can get past the... You know. I've had a lot of time to think, and I believe human history may have been studied through a narrow lens. It's so ingrained that predators are inherently evil. We might have overlooked the forest for the trees.
And where does that leave us? I don't think the Gajids are the only ones plotting an attack in the Federation. If you have any ideas for a peaceful resolution, I'm all ears. But we intend to defend Earth to the last.
The Kolshin's demeanor shifted in an instant, and suddenly an authoritative officer was present.
You could start by releasing the hostages. Now. Peaceful species don't hold diplomats and civilians against their will.
That was my doing, Roussel, I chimed in. After what happened with Marcel, you can see why I thought it necessary.
But I agree with Intava. It reflects poorly on humanity, because regardless of the truth, everyone will fault us in that matter. The Federation must be worried for their citizens' condition.
Maya tapped his fingers on the table, deep in thought.
It will help our case for their own people to validate what has been said by the Venlil. We should allow anyone to leave that wishes to.
News of our existence is out.
No, I did.
The damage is already done. There's no reason to keep them here.
I flicked my ears. Very well. I'll reopen the borders tonight. At least for outbound ships. Roussel's eyes widened in surprise. It was obvious the officer had been expecting resistance rather than for the predators to side with him.
Good. That's settled. I knew that ideas, Roussel.
Maya asked.
The Federation is holding a summit a few days from now. They're going to discuss what to do regarding humanity. You could send a representative. Perhaps they would let you say a few words in your defense.
What's to stop the Federation from covering up anything we say? Any information we give them, or anything that contradicts their narrative? It sounds like your leadership has already made up their minds.
The Federation aren't out to dupe their own citizens. They just can't have another Arxer. Everything will be broadcast, so even if the leadership won't budge, you could sway public opinion.
But you obviously sound convinced that the Federation will let the humans speak at all, Russell. What's to stop them from slotting a collar in our representative and bashing their face in two? Or shooting them on sight?
Honestly, nothing. I can't predict how they'll react. I would have thought we were better than that at one time, but I don't anymore.
I couldn't send anyone to that fate. It would be akin to murder.
I switched my tail in agreement. After watching a human pilot brutalized at the hands of a Federation crew, the risks were fresh in everyone's memory. It was a senseless sacrifice that could be for nothing. The Federation would be reluctant to let a predator voice its thoughts. Russell knew better than anyone how deep-seated their hatred ran.
I'll go.
Noah said. My pupil snapped toward him. Absolutely not. I don't want to see you killed or maimed as a lab rat.
I'm not afraid of dying. If there is a single species like the Venlil out there, I find it a worthy cause.
The ambassador gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder, then turned his head toward Maya.
All I ask is for a cyanide capsule. I don't know if I could bear torture. I want a way out if it comes to that.
The Secretary General hesitated.
Are you sure? I couldn't tell you, not with a straight face, that I believe you'll come home.
Quite sure. And I'd like to leave as soon as possible. There's no time to waste.
Horror chilled my blood. The last person I wanted to fall into Federation custody was my sweet, forgiving Noah. He was a godsend in the Ambassadorial War, always with a perfect read on my emotions and willing to answer every awkward question. I had come to think of him as one of my own advisors. Perhaps I was a bit too reliant on him to defuse tense situations. I'll go with you then, I hissed. I'll try to protect you, though I don't think I can do much. My standing with the Federation has diminished.
Tava, no. What if they hurt you? Think they were Venlil in the cage with the starving predator, remember?
They won't do that to me. I'm a planetary leader, and the galaxy will be watching. I am not worried for my safety. Russell lowered his eyes.
Please allow me to accompany you as well. I wish to turn myself in for high treason.
We don't want you punished for helping us.
Maya said.
I know, but my testimony may be helpful in balancing what Sovlin has told
Dry!
And I wish to be home, whatever happens. My heart lies with the Federation.
If that's what you really want, you're not a prisoner.
Disappointment seeped into the UN leader's tone.
I do wish you would reconsider, though.
I won't.
Very well. Good luck to all of you, then.
Noah stood up from his chair and extended his hand to the Secretary General. Maya tugged at it in that quirky grappling ritual humans did. It felt like a final goodbye, though I hoped that wasn't the case. I wondered what the gentle ambassador could say that would dissuade the Federation. He needed to challenge hundreds of years of research and flip assumptions without getting killed. It was a tall task, even for a man who epitomized the best of humanity. Memory transcription subject, Governor Tava of the Venlil Republic. Date, standardized human time, September 10th, 2136. Two patrol ships roofed to intercept our transport the second we crossed the Zerulean border. There was none of the warmth in their greeting that I craved. I hoped that dodging Khajiit territory would lower the temperature of any interactions, but word travelled quickly. Our neighbours possessed a keen awareness that the Venlil had thrown in our lot with predators. We were guilty by association now. I assured the Zeruleans of my diplomatic intent and decided not to mention the humans' presence until we reached our destination. After several back-and-forth conversations, the guards received permission to escort us to the summit. I suspect they wouldn't have allowed it if they knew a human and a traitor were the other two passengers. The Federation chaperones were diligent, tailing us through subspace for the duration of the days-long trip. I still don't know how I'm going to convince them to let a predator play politics. Maybe I should just wing it. Our transport was midway through its descent now, plunging through the host planet atmosphere. It was apparent what Russell meant by returning home. The Koshian homeworld, Arthur, a name that translates to garden, was hosting the convention in its capital. It would require great care not to incite a stampede with the crowd I anticipated. Millions of visitors dwelled among artistic buildings and botanical wonders. The renowned School of the Flora meant Arthur had a large student population. There would be ample spectators at the governing hall, since such sessions would open to the public. If the predator was reported on the loose, the premises might be vacated or locked down. I wondered if the nearest civilians would be roofed to bunkers, the way I did them when the humans approached my planet. It seemed silly in retrospect, sending out a planetary distress signal over a two-person vessel. Something I was going to tell Noah that I intended to surrender Venlil Prime to him. The Terran bastard would have a hearty laugh at my expense. This is Governor Tarver. I reiterate my request to speak to the presiding chieftain immediately.
Hey, sweetie.
It is urgent. I
Bedtime?
transmitted for the 4th time. My designated strategy was to hail the Federation over the media channels so that if anything went wrong, the public could hold them accountable. Brissell was sandwiched beside me in order to appear in our video feed. The Colchian officer couldn't stop yawning. His orange eyes were bleeding from sleep deprivation. I was amazed he hadn't blooded off from exhaustion, regardless of his instinct. Noah was preoccupied editing the first contact materials the UN had thrown together. The Predators seemed uncharacteristically nervous. I knew he wanted to paint a rosy picture of humanity and to include anything that might help their cause. Wasn't he displaying that closed body language he explained to me long ago? Maybe I was projecting my feelings onto him since I was terrified about what would happen to him next.
He's signing on now. Please be patient.
Came the monotone reply.
Your family here is strange as things are, Governor.
I was aware of the fact that our ship was target locked. That wasn't exactly standard procedure for an approaching diplomat. A large security force was present to ward off any acts or attacks in case they got a whiff of the convention's location. The Federation couldn't afford to have every galactic leader killed in the decapitation strike. We're not part of the Federation anymore, are we? I realized with a pang of sorrow. I'm probably going to be offering our withdrawal today. And if they don't kick us out first. The terrible bastard had clapped his hands together in what I believed was satisfaction and jolted me out of my thoughts. Brissell whined at the unexpected movement, and the human dipped his head in apology.
All set, Tarver.
Okay,
Noah
baby.
whispered,
Come here.
Send it over.
Alright.
I tapped a button on my holopad
There we
and plugged
go.
the data cache to
Time
the
for the
local
bed.
internet. The compilation documented everything that had transpired since first contact. It also went over humanity's surprising ability.
Alright, have a good night, guys.
Cultural nuances the Federation overlooked in
Yes.
past research. That was the narrative I wanted to circulate.